In today's video, I'm going to show you how to use a phonics assessment to figure out what your students are ready to learn next. You'll also get a link to a free phonics assessment that you can use immediately. If you're new here, my name is Anna Geiger. I'm the author of Reach All Readers, creator of the Measured Mom website, and host of the Triple R Teaching podcast. I'm also currently pursuing my PhD in literacy. When I think back to my first years of teaching, I taught a combination class of 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. And I remember that I had 2 3rd grade students who were really struggling with decoding and spelling. And I wish I knew then what I know now. What I did was I had them practice reading more. I gave them more reading practice. What I should have done was figured out where the gaps were in their phonics knowledge so we could fill those gaps and help them read more automatically and fluently. Today, I want to help you avoid that same mistake by showing you how to use a phonics diagnostic assessment. When we think about the big picture of assessments for our students, I recommend starting with the universal screener. Examples of universal screeners include Acadience and Dibble's 8. There are many more, but the point of these universal screeners is to figure out if your students are on track to be okay at reading. And you can figure that out by looking at their scores. Are they reaching or exceeding benchmarks? Then they're on track. If they're below benchmark or well below, then we need to figure out how to fill in those gaps. It's always good then to start with a universal screener, because from that, you can figure out which students you need to dig deeper with to figure out exactly where the gaps are. Now, a universal screener is not meant to test every single phonics skill. It's meant to tell you which students likely have gaps. To figure out exactly what gaps there are, that's where a phonics diagnostic assessment comes in. It's important to remember the point of a phonics diagnostic assessment is not to figure out a child's grade level. It's to figure out exactly what skills they don't know so that you know what to teach next. You can use a phonics diagnostic assessment for 2 reasons. One might be, again, to fill in those gaps. You've done your universal screener, you see that some kids are behind in word recognition, and you want to figure out what to teach them. But you might also use it for the whole class. If you're going to group your students by phonics skill, and this may be done in kindergarten, 1st, or even 2nd grade, through small group instruction. A phonics assessment will test skills in order from simple to more complex. Now, there's disagreement about what those are, so that's why different phonics assessments will test the skills in different orders. But typically, they're going to start with letter sounds, move into very simple words like VC and CVC words, and then get more complex from there. Ideally, each measure on the assessment is going to include both real words and non-words. And you might say, what's the point of nonsense words? Do kids really have to be able to read nonsense words? Well, the reason we put them on there is not because we want to give them tons and tons of practice reading these words, but we want to see if they've memorized the words that are real. So for example, a child might see the word red and read it correctly, red, but then if you gave them the nonsense word mep, they might say mip. And so that shows you that even though they could read the word bed, it's probably because they've seen it before and read it before, but they don't know that the E spells eh and not I. So those nonsense words really help you know whether students know their vowel sounds. A lot of questions I get about phonics assessments are, when should I discontinue the assessment? Because if you're working with a student and let's say they are breaking down at those CVC words and clearly that's where instruction should begin, there's no reason to go all the way through the phonics assessment. You're not going to get any new information and you're going to exhaust or frustrate the child. So there isn't a hard and fast rule for this. Typically, I would say when you get to the point where you're not really getting any more useful information, it's time to stop. Or if you're getting to a point where they're getting a lot wrong and they're getting frustrated and you feel like this is no longer serving a useful purpose. You could discontinue the assessment after students get 2 or 3 wrong in a particular section, but that might be a little premature because what if they actually know the skill 2 skills down? So maybe this skill they don't know, but 2 skills down they do know it. Since your program might go in a different order, it's good to assess a few levels farther than when they start to break down. Another question is, well, what if they can decode a word, but they can't read it fluently? So they know the sounds, but they're reading it slowly. Probably, I would recommend starting instruction on the skill they don't know yet, but then of course put in lots of review so that they can build automaticity with those previously learned skills. So they've learned them, but they're not automatic with them. Automaticity is really important, so we always want to mix in that review. So, in review, a phonics diagnostic assessment is used to figure out what phonics skills students know and don't know, so we know where to begin instruction. Now, that instruction could be in an intervention setting, or it could be for organizing small groups in Tier 1. If you're using this for an intervention setting, then you're probably only going to assess the students who scored below benchmark in word recognition skills on the universal screener. However, if you're using the phonics diagnostic assessment to form small groups for Tier 1, then you'll want to give it to everyone. When you're giving a phonics assessment, you'll want to discontinue it when you're no longer getting useful information. One more note, it's really good to use an encoding assessment along with the decoding assessment. So decoding is reading the words, encoding is spelling. My free phonics assessment does include an encoding assessment. I recommend giving that, but keep in mind that sometimes the spelling skills lag a bit behind decoding. That's not a surprise, but if you decide to move ahead with the phonics skill when they're behind in encoding, again, you want to make sure you do lots and lots of review and practice with those encoding skills. You can get my free phonics assessment by clicking the link below this video. If this video was helpful, please like and subscribe.